Foundation, together as Mrs. Elizabeth Bettina, who brought to us the story of a great Italian who is not very much known for the help who gave to other Italians, such as the people of belonging to the Jewish culture who were discriminated since 1938 and who risked their life in during the war and during the German and fascist occupation. Gino Bartali, I would like to say, everybody knows, he never talked about what he did. This because belonged to his personality. He was a very shy person, and he said that the great character of a person is what he says, but in what he does. And I think this is a great a teaching for all of us. It's very important to remember the example of people like that. Well, I apologize because it's in the middle of the night, so it's and also for my English maybe not very well fine-tuned. And it's very important to remember these people in a moment when discrimination against people in the world race and are sometimes encouraged by public person. We hope that his example will show all of us the courage in believing to our personal ideas and to the importance of helping each other. Yad Vashem, the Consul General of Israel, remembers Gino Bartali, and I personally visited his the tree that remembers his example. And there is something that I would like to remember also that really impressed me when I visited this the museum, which is when it says at the very beginning, it said that the persecution against the Jews was not an action taken by a special, a particular group of people. It was actually, their action was prepared by a society where anti-Semitism, I mean, the feeling against the Jews was growing for centuries. And unfortunately, this is what happened when it came to the apex of this phenomenon. So we hope that the example of people like Gino Bartali will teach to all of us how much is important to respect each other, how much is important to help each other in order to build a much better society. Well, let me thank, before I leave and before I wish you, well, I would like to wish, of course, the success of this initiative, the committees of Montreal, also my colleague Sparta Tocacaldalaro, and all those who have believed and worked to this initiative, which is not easy to realize in such a difficult time. And I hope you will accept my apologies if I go to bed, because it was a very difficult day. But nevertheless, I really wanted to participate to this event and to join you to express our appreciation for this initiative and my personal solidarity for the choice of this the Italian story, which make us very proud of being Italian. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. That was the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Italy and the Counselor of the Embassy, all the way from Rome, Italy, Giovanni Maria De Vita. Thank you so much. Next, our speaker, on behalf of the Italian Ambassador to Canada, Claudio Tafori, we have the Deputy Head of Mission of the Embassy of Ottawa, Spartaco Caldara. Spartaco, the floor is yours.
Okay, so first of all, I hope you hear me.
We hear you.
Great. So first, well, again, good evening, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to give these very few remarks on behalf of the Ambassador Claudio Tafuri, who could not be here tonight because he's in Italy actually right now, but in a fairly remote area with not an easy connection. So I would also like to thank, of course, all of the people who made this event happen. The Congress of Italian-Canadians, the Foundation of the Italian Community, and then the committees, and Casa d'Italia. But mostly of all, I would like to thank the JNF, because it is actually giving us the opportunity with this outreach activity to tell a story that, as the book of Miss Bettina says, and it's titled after, it's not told, it's not known. And it is true, it is true. There is not a very wide knowledge of all these activities that have happened during the Nazi occupation of Italy, and basically during World War II. And entire generations, as Consul General of Israel reminded earlier, have been basically saved by single persons, single families, single villages who put their in existence at a huge risk in order to hide, help, and support people that were basically persecuted. And again, they did it by reminding all of ourselves the importance of not being indifferent when tragedies happen, when horrors, when history creates horrors. And again, these very single people, these very single entities have made a huge difference. And this is an enormous lesson for us. Is an enormous lesson for us that we must never forget, and must guide future generations in order to avoid similar horrors to happen again. And it's also a story of the close ties of two communities, the Italian and the Jewish community, which are also reflected in the excellent relations between our two friend countries. So again, I would really like to thank you for this opportunity, and thank all of you for this event, and thank especially the author of this book, Miss Bettina, because again, she gave the unique opportunity to tell and to know a story that is basically still not known enough. As my colleague Giovanni anticipated earlier, no one knew what Gino Bartoli did up until after he died. They all knew him as this nice, fantastic cyclist, and his rivalry with Fausto Coppi, but no one knew what actually did in his life, which was way beyond being an athlete. So again, thank you very much, and I really wish a nice evening and a fruitful webinar where an interesting debate and beautiful stories can be told. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for those words. Ladies and gentlemen, that was speaking on behalf of the Italian Ambassador of Canada, Claudio Tafori. That was Deputy Head of Mission of the Embassy of Ottawa, Spartaco Caldero. Our next speaker is a former president of the ICCF, a former executive at RBC, a longtime supporter of JNF, and we do consider him part of the JNF family. Senator Tony Lafreda, who is under iPhone, so if you bear with us, we're actually trying to track him down. Tony, oh, there he is. He raised his hand. It's the senator himself.
So thank you,
Senator.
Thank you all for being here. I had some problems actually connecting with my laptop, and this is what happens in virtual.
This is what happens when you're dealing with virtual events. We'll give the senator a few seconds to see if he can.
Unmute.
There we go. You're unmuted. We just need your camera so we can see that face.
Okay, I'm trying to get to the camera here. Oh boy.
The good news is no one has a lot of places to go to these days. So. Senator, if it's easier, you can just speak without the camera. Senator, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, but
right.
I just can't get the video.
Don't worry about the video.
So trying to get the video, but just can't. Like I said, maybe you can move on to somebody else and come back to me in a few minutes.
You know what? We will,
okay, here you are. You got me?
We got you.
Okay, there we go. Well, sorry about that. I mean, I'm trying to really center this properly. I was having problems with my laptop because of was out of electricity today, but here we are. Well, thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity and the time to be with you today. Congratulations to the community. Congratulations to Bettina. Congratulations to Judy. Congratulations to the Jewish community, the Italian community. I think untold stories are important. We must tell the untold stories. And this is a great story. I think that amongst my best memories are my trip to Israel, my trips to Italy, and I'm proud to be Italian, of the Italian community. I'm proud of what the Italians have done, but I'm also proud to be so close to the Jewish community. I consider myself as part of the community, a very important part of the community, having participated in so many endeavors, so many philanthropic events, so many evenings, and I have so many friends in the community that, to me, it's close to the heart. I'm very happy that we are telling the story. I'm very happy that we are considered very close, both communities. We're considered good old friends. And I often say it takes a long time to grow old friends. So congratulations. I'm looking forward to the event. I'm looking forward to the evening. I apologize for the technical difficulties, but I'm here nonetheless. And let the show begin. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Senator Tony Lafreda. Our last speaker, before we get to Elizabeth Bettina, is someone who really, without her, we wouldn't be here tonight. Her devotion to this event, her resilience over the years to make tonight happen, truly remarkable, inspirational. Ladies and gentlemen, from JNF Montreal, our chair of outreach, Judy Fish. Judy, the virtual room is yours.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, it's only taken me 2 years to get this together, but finally. Okay, buonasera and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As Phil mentioned, I'm the chair of outreach for JNF, and tonight is the third event in a series of outreach projects honoring non-Jewish heroes who saved lives during World War II. By exploring this theme, all of us at JNF are proud to be building bridges with different cultural communities across Canada. In our first presentation, we partnered with the Portuguese community to honor De Souza Mendes, a diplomat who saved lives by issuing unauthorized visas to Portugal. In our second presentation, we partnered with the Filipino community to honor President Quezon, who welcomed Jewish refugees to the Philippines when other countries refused their entry. Tonight, we're bringing together Canadians, Italian, and Jewish communities to honor the everyday Italians who helped save their Jewish countrymen in Italy by hiding them from the Nazis. I'm excited and honored to be introducing you tonight to our inspirational speaker, Miss Elizabeth Bettina. She's the Italian-American author of It Happened in Italy, Untold Stories of How the People of Italy Defied the Horrors of the Holocaust. This work brings to light the little-known history of how 80% of the Jews in Italy were saved. Elizabeth's book was the inspiration for the documentary film My Italian Secret, The Forgotten Heroes, narrated by the actress Isabella Rossellini. Elizabeth's work has been recognized by the Simon Wiesenthal Center, and she has had private audiences with both Pope Benedict XVI and Pope Francis. As a public speaker, Ms. Bettina has been invited to lecture all over the world. To further her mission to inspire people like us to take action in our lives to help others, Ms. Bettina founded an international organization called Be the Difference, Never Again. It is Ms. Bettina's core belief that each person, every action, large or small, can make a difference. So without further ado, I'm honored to present to you Ms. Elizabeth Bettina.
Hi, good evening, everybody. And with all technical difficulties, we are actually together from around the world in everybody's living room. Voila, okay, the screen just changed. Hi. So first and foremost, I must thank Judy. She is one of the most tenacious people I've ever met. She got in contact with me about 10 years ago, and ultimately, through all of this, we are here together. Judy, you're amazing. David, Phil, and Galith, you have been fantastic in getting this to work together, and Giovanna and the rest of the Italian community. So, buonasera a tutti, da dove siete, wherever you all are. And there are also some Americans joining us this evening. Some people I grew up with from Jericho that are dispersed all around the United States. And they're one of the reasons that I am here with you, because I grew up in a Jewish neighborhood on Long Island. So the Italian American grows up in a Jewish neighborhood and learns this story. So can you show that first slide of the rabbi? This slide brought me to you this evening. This slide, this picture was taken in 1940 in a little village in southern Italy, about an hour south of Naples, embedded in the valley of a mountain, the home of my grandparents on my mom's side. What is this Orthodox rabbi doing on the steps of a church in Campania, Italy, next to a bishop, police officers, etc., in 1940? It's about 100 yards from my grandmother's home. And this started me on the unexpected journey. You are now going to meet some of the survivors in my book, some are which also are in the documentary. So we will hear their words of gratitude towards the Italians and why they lived to a certain lovely age. And to no further ado, the documentary.
My father lost a brother, the brother's wife, his own mother, his sister, and his sister's husband.
When the camps were open and it was realized that 6 million Jews had been killed, of which 1 or 2 million children, people were so flabbergasted. I cannot imagine a German official helping a German Jew get false identification papers.
The Italians saved 40,000 Jews, which is not a known fact.
I think that the Italians as a whole, who helped us Jews, knew exactly what they were doing.
And this is why I refuse to say that I was in a concentration camp. I was interned, not in a concentration camp.
By single people, by institutions, by clerics, many priests and cardinals helped the Jews.
They did not deport Italians who helped Jews. They shot them. They executed the secretary of the bishop.
That man wasn't the only one who took a chance. A lot of Italians took a chance.
These people opened up their home. They opened up their lives, and they put their lives at risk.
Between the fascists and the Germans, they knew very well that helping a Jew they would be put against the wall and shot.
For the Italian people, we were human beings, equal to them.
All these Italians, they knew there was no difference between a Jew and a non-Jew for them.
The Italians were people to save you, to help you, and they figured you are just as much a human being as I am.
I wouldn't be here today if I didn't live in Italy.
I'm alive today at 86 because of Italy and the people.
Hi. So you got to meet some of the wonderful survivors. I was privileged to be part of their lives. And more importantly, I was privileged to be able to tell their stories. They trusted me to tell this unknown story of why they survived. They felt that the Italian story had not been discussed, but people had learned about Oskar Schindler through Schindler's List and stories about other countries helping. And one of the reasons is, like many Holocaust survivors, they stayed silent for many years because they felt, as one survivor said, I didn't suffer that badly. I was hidden. It was not so bad in context of the times. So before I go forward, what's most important is that you understand that it was all wrong. The framework of what I'm going to tell you is under it is all wrong. But what has happened is their stories of how they survived. So we're shedding light on the goodness amidst the evil and how, if you're not indifferent, things can be different. And you will see how individuals made a choice to be different, to help others, whether they were Italian Jews or foreign Jews, because as the survivors said, they were human beings like we were. So the way I came to this story, as I alluded to before, my background is I'm Italian-American, grew up in a place called Jericho on Long Island, and Jericho is by the name a majority Jewish neighborhood. And when I grew up, all of my best friends growing up were Jewish, and I learned about the Holocaust in a way through people I knew. And as a little girl, I remember overhearing things, thinking I must have gotten it wrong, that people were put into ovens. Unfortunately, I heard correctly. When I was 10 years old, my mom's mom took me to visit her parents, my great-grandparents in this little village. So I was always around people in their 80s and 90s as a little girl. I went to this little village, which even today with a GPS, it's very hard to find. And I spent the entire summer there, all 3 months. And I did that from every summer when I was 10 to 18. My great-grandfather was still very tough. And when he said something, everybody listened. And I heard this, that some Jews were hidden in our village during the Holocaust. And to me, qualche ebreo would be 10, 12. And I heard the story that my great-grandfather hid some. I couldn't understand how they made their way down the entire boot of Italy to this little speck of dust village. And that's all I knew for years, until about 15 years ago when I saw this particular picture that's on the screen, which led me on this unexpected journey. Next slide, please. Look at this. What does it look like? It is a synagogue in a concentration camp. Yes, you heard me correctly. It's a synagogue in a concentration camp. Hebrew writing on the wall, the Star of David, and the 10 Commandments. Okay? What had happened, a little piece of history here is, in the 30s, a lot of Jews started hearing the rumblings of what was happening when Hitler went into office. Some decided to leave Germany, Austria, etc. Some got into Italy because they had heard through the grapevine that Italy was being nice to Jews. That's hard to understand given that Mussolini was allied with Hitler, but it was the way it was, okay? And people got into Italy without a visa. Many did. Many also got into Italy without a visa after the war began. Foreign Jews got into Italy about 10,000 or more. And in 1940, when the war began, Italian Jews were able to remain in their own homes, and they had the same rations as the Italians. So if an Italian got 100 grams of bread, so did the Jewish person in the town. The foreign Jews were taken to concentration camps. Some were in villages, and there was one large one, Ferramonti, which you will learn about later. This one was in my grandmother's village. They had taken over a convent. The convent was attached to the church. The nuns were no longer there, and they were able to have their religious rituals, pray, etc. Please note in the pictures that you will see how everyone is dressed. They are wearing their own clothing with no Star of David, no J, no armband. There is no outward identification when they're walking through the village that they would be Jewish. And yes, you heard me correctly. They were allowed to mingle with the people from the town. Italian Jews were not in a ghetto. Yes, there was a ghetto in Rome in another time. We are talking specifically in the 30s to 1945. There was no forced ghetto. So anybody walking around, no one knew from looking at them that they were Jewish because there was no outward identification. Next slide, please. This is a list of names of the 16th of September, 1940, about 200 plus names of people that were in Campania on that particular date. They are all, as a friend of mine, Ellen Barr Spiegel, who I've known since 4th grade, and used to write to me when we were in Campania. These are our high school names. They're names like Epstein, Weinstock, Eisner, etc. These are people that went to our high school, their kind of last names. She said, what were these people doing in your grandma's village? I said, I don't know. And she asked me, please look into this. Next slide, please. This is Gemani Paladucci. He was a police officer in northern Italy. He was a police officer in charge of foreign people coming into Italy, the questore. His uncle was that priest, the bishop standing next to the rabbi. That was his uncle. He knew that by sending people to his uncle's village, they would be treated well. The rabbi was the rabbi of Fiume. Next slide, please. Look at this. This is a orchestra, a little guitar, jazz orchestra, string quartet. Look at the way everybody's dressed. The gentleman with the black shirt, second to the right, is Walter Wolfe. He is the first person I met who was Jewish, who had survived in Italy. I had attended a lecture at Queen's College, and he was showing a slideshow of his pictures. A slideshow of his pictures while he was in a concentration camp. That in and of itself is cause to pause, because nobody has pictures of their time in a concentration camp, let alone that they looked like they were anywhere else but a concentration camp. This is Walter in Campania. When he showed the picture on the wall and came up as Campania, I practically ejected from my seat. Couldn't believe he was showing Campania. Walter, who had written a wonderful book called Bad Times, Good People, had lectured for about 12 years with a wonderful friend of mine named Vincent Marmorale, who was a retired history teacher, and he and I collaborated on the making of the documentary, and who is a very important resource for me writing my book. And together we took 4 groups of survivors back to Italy so they could meet their rescuers. Having said that, Walter and Vincent had lectured together around the United States for 12 years. That particular day, Vince was not there. Walter had never met anybody who knew where Campania was, let alone had been there. So me, in my basic fashion, my mouth went faster than my brain, and I said, you need to go back to Italy. Walter had expressed a desire, he'd wanted to go back. He hadn't been back since the 70s. So I didn't know how I was gonna make this happen, but I did. I went to the Italian Consul General in New York City, Antonio Bandini. He was wonderful, put me in touch with the Italian Tourism Board, and one thing led to another. So ultimately we got a wonderful trip sponsored, and Walter went back to Italy. Next slide, please. Take a look at this picture. Look at it very carefully. It is the same steps where you saw the rabbi. Please note the police officers on the bottom steps. There's 3 police officers. Look at where their hands are. Their hands are in their laps or they're folded. Can you see a gun? Look how everybody is dressed. They're wearing their own clothing. Do you see any identification that they might be Jewish? They're all dressed well, many in jackets and ties. Please note to the left, there's an arch of a doorway, and there's a gentleman that's tall with a white shirt. You will meet him later. He's a very important person to meet. But again, look at this picture. If I didn't say that this was a picture taken on the steps of a concentration camp, you would not know that. Does not look like Auschwitz. Next slide, please. This is Walter Wolfe with the plaid tie on the left, and this is Remo Tagliaferri. Remo Tagliaferri is one of the police officers in that picture. Walter is also in that picture. They embraced when they saw each other like long lost high school or college roommates, okay? Unbelievable. And Remo Tagliaferri said, Wolfe, I remember you played soccer very well. Yes, you heard me correctly. The Jews were allowed to play soccer. They had their own teams. They were taken outside of the town where the land was flat so they could play soccer, okay? So Wolfe, you were a good soccer player. And Walter Wolfe responded, I want to thank you for treating us with respect and dignity at a time in history when Jews were not treated with respect and dignity. Next slide, please. This is Ursula. You met Ursula prior. She was a blonde woman saying that she was in Italy. These are her parents. Ursula is from Germany, from Breslau. Her parents were very well-to-do. They owned a very exclusive department store, think a Bergdorf Goodman. Her parents decided they should go to Italy in the late 30s. Her father would go back and forth. And one trip when he came to Italy to visit, the war broke out. And because they were foreign Jews, they were taken together and then separated. Ursula and her mom went to a town outside of Perugia, and her father went to Campania. Her father is in that picture on the steps. How ironic is that? Next slide, please. This is Ursula with the priest who saved her life. This is Monsignor Skivo. Monsignor Skivo was honored by Yad Vashem. There's a picture in my book of Ursula, Monsignor Skivo, and Mordecai Paldiel, who was the head of the organization called Yad Vashem for Righteous Among Nations. And I have met Mordecai Paldiel many times here in New York. He is a wonderful human being. So this is Monsignor Skivo being honored by the President of Italy. And in this picture, guess how old Monsignor Skivo is? In this picture, he is 98 years old. I had the good fortune of meeting Monsignor Skivo. He was an extraordinary, wonderful gentleman. Next slide, please. This is Horst Stein with the saxophone on the right. You met Horst in the 3-minute clip. He was the one who said, I refuse to say I was in a concentration camp. Horst and Walter Wolfe were friends in high school in Frankfurt. They both played on soccer. They survived in Italy, but they didn't know they were both in Italy at the time. Horst was in Abruzzi, Rome, 2 hours to the right in the Abruzzi area. There was no communication in Italy during the war. This happened organically. The fact that Walter had his string orchestra and Horst had his jazz quartet, there you go. This is what they did on their own. This was nothing organized. Please look at how these gentlemen are dressed. Jacket, tie, no identification. This is in the early 40s. Next slide, please. These are Horst's parents. Look at them. Look how they're dressed. Horst's father was not feeling well, and the Italian government sent him to a spa to get better, a spa called San Pellegrino. He was sent there with his wife. What would have happened to you if you were not feeling well if you were in Auschwitz? Next slide, please. Again, this is Horst with his father and other internees in their concentration camp in the Abruzzi region. Their wives were allowed to visit. This was visiting day. I want you to imagine what would have happened if there was visiting day in Auschwitz. If people had a visiting day and they were allowed to leave, what would they have said? And who would have believed them? And again, look at this slide. This shows you the difference between Italy and Italian-run camps and German-run camps. Please remember, these pictures have been given to me by the survivors. They are their own personal pictures. Next slide, please. This is Rabbi Pachifucci. He was the rabbi in Genoa. He would go all the way down to Ferramonti, which is in Calabria, about 20 minutes north of Cosenza. Calabria, Ferramonti. It had the largest concentration camp in Italy. It was 92 barracks built specifically for this purpose, when anywhere from 2,000 to 4,000 people, depending on the year and the month. Please note how everyone is dressed. The Jews were allowed to self-govern. Rabbi Pachifucci would come down from Genoa all the way down to Calabria, so the entire boot of Italy, to perform weddings, you heard me correctly, and brisses, and to help make sure that they were being governed correctly and they could have their religious rituals. Next slide, please. Please look at this slide. What might it be? It is pictures of children in school. Again, there were 2,000 to 4,000 people in Ferramonti. The Jews organized to have school. They had shops, they had medicine. There were a lot of people from the professions. They organized, it became its own village. These are children in school. What would have happened if you were under 16 in Auschwitz when you arrived? One woman got in touch with me when she found herself on page 127 in my book. Charlotte Hauptman found herself in my book. I get an email, a phone call. I'm a little girl in page 127. She is in the documentary. Her grandson lives in New York City now. It is an amazing story. Next slide, please. Look at this. What might this look like? Yes, you are seeing a wedding. You're seeing people dressed lovely. The men are wearing top hats. The ladies are dressed nicely. And yes, there is a wedding dress. And in the background, you see what? Barracks. This is one of the weddings that occurred in Ferramonti between 1940 and 1943. Imagine weddings in an Auschwitz. Imagine Jews being allowed to be reunited with their families. This is what happened in Italy if people made something called a domanda, a request. Initially, they were separated and they were made a domanda, and in almost all cases, the families were joined back together, okay? But I want you to remember, this was not everything that was in Italy. It was from 1940 to September 8th, 1943. Italy was allied with Germany, yet at that point, according to all scholars, there were no mass deportations, and according to most, there were no deportations under the Mussolini government. The deportations occurred when Italy capitulated on September 8th, and they joined the Allies. At that point, all bets were off, and whether you were a foreign Jew who sought refuge in Italy or you were an Italian Jew, if you were found, you were going to be deported. Next slide, please. Take a look at this picture. Do you remember that I said, remember a gentleman in the arch of the convent in Campania? That gentleman is on the right of the picture, standing behind the woman with the black dress. That is Max Kleinman. I have Max Kempen and Max Kleinman. This is Max Kleinman. He and his wife were reunited in Potenza. Dr. Kleinman was in Campania. At one point, he also was ill and he was taken to the hospital so he could get better. His son was born in Potenza, Walter Kleinman. Walter Kleinman lives in Huntington, New York right now. This is their family reunited. I found out about the Walter Kleinman story when I was going to a bar mitzvah in Nashville. A woman there heard that I was working on. She said, I know somebody who was saved in Italy. Ava Rosenfeld. Ava Rosenfeld is in the middle of the picture in the top row. Ava was adopted by the Kleinman family when her mother and father were no longer around. And she had pictures of her time in Italy. She told me about another family she was with. I looked in that list that I have in the book and I saw that Dr. Kleinman would have been about 96, 97 years old at the time. Before I could even ask, she said he's alive and well, and he lives in Flushing. Flushing is where my grandmother lived. And so this man spent time in my grandmother's village, and they also lived 1 mile apart in New York, in Queens. And he was alive and well. 2 days later, I was in his house in Flushing interviewing him, and the rest is history. Next slide, please. This is in Rome. It is a plaque in the Jewish ghetto. It is commemorating the 16th of October, 1943, which is after September 8th, 1943. It is the day of the roundup of Rome, a very sad day when over 1,200 Roman Jews were deported. Approximately 1,200 were deported to Auschwitz, but 8,000 to 10,000 were hidden in Rome. As a woman who is a doctor in Rome, she said, before 1943, we were discriminated against and we were ridiculed and we suffered economic hardship. But true persecution of our lives did not happen until after September 8th, 1943, under German occupation. So this goes to the point that it is the framework of it was all bad, but we focus on the ones who made a choice to not be indifferent, to make a choice to help. But 20% of the Jews did get deported, which means they were either turned in for a reward or they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. Next slide, please. As I mentioned before, we took 4 trips back to Italy. There were amazing, amazing trips to have people go back and walk in the history of time. This is one of the trips. In the back row, top center, you see Walter Kleinman. Baby Walter Kleinman went back to Potenza and met with the family who helped save his life. There's Ursula in front of him with sunglasses. There's Edith Burns, various other people. And they went back. This is Ferramonti in Calabria, where we took people where they were. You have also Edith Burns in the picture. Edith Burns survived Auschwitz. She was in the little 3-minute clip that you heard. Her husband was in Campania. Her husband was in Campania with Walter Wolfe. I unfortunately did not get a chance to meet him. He had passed on before I met Walter. And she is the one who said to her husband, "You had a picnic in Italy compared to me in Auschwitz." And there are pictures in the museum at Ferramonti and pictures in my book showing Jews at a picnic in Ferramonti. So she was correct. This again was an extraordinary privilege to go back in time with the people whose lives were saved in Italy. And we'll go back to where it all started for me. Next slide, please. This is where we went. We're back on the steps of the picture with the rabbi. And there's Walter in the striped shirt, and his father was in that arch to the left. This was an amazing time. There's Ursula in the front with a black jacket and a white top. Her father was also there. There's Edith Burns in front of Walter, and there's Eva Kleinman. And there she is because she was with the family, and everybody else is Vince, and it was an extraordinary journey. So this is just a snapshot. When my book came out, I was inundated with beautiful letters, emails, calls that I too was saved in Italy. Thank you for telling my story. Well, it wasn't exactly their story, but there's a common theme. 5. Nobody could have survived without one of the 5. You had the average person who did what? If they didn't exactly help, they stayed quiet. They did not turn someone in. And trust me, the Italians in the little villages, they know everything, absolutely everything. They're the best yentas you could get. Facebook, they can't hold a candle to these people. They know it all, okay? Even today. So tell me in the 1940s, are you kidding? They knew everybody, and they knew who was in the village and who wasn't. Okay, so the average person helped you. The local police officer helped you, because in many cases, the local police officer knocked on the door. As it happened to Walter Wolfe, it happened to people that I've met through the Shoah Foundation. I spoke with Stephen Smith, who's the director of Steven Spielberg's Shoah Foundation. We compared notes, and he said, "How did you know this answer?" And I said, "Because I've heard it many, many times." The answer was, someone knocked on the door, and the police officer says, "Tomorrow morning, wink, wink, I'm gonna come to arrest you," which means you leave. So when I come tomorrow with a collaborator, with a Nazi, I can open the door and go like this. They're not here. They're not under the bed. They're not in the closet. They're not in the attic. And the Italians are very good at this thing. When they don't know where something is or what happened, they go, "Boo." So the police officer goes, he made sure the family was hidden, turns to the other guys and I don't know where they went. Then he signs the documents, because he has to sign a document stating that he went to look for these people and they were gone. So 70 some odd years later, an historian will go through a dusty box and find this document and says, "My goodness, this guy, Mario Carabinieri, was terrible. He was a Nazi collaborator." But nowhere would you find the document that he warned Charlotte Fullenbaum and family the day before to leave. And Charlotte is alive and well in Los Angeles right now. Walter Wolfe had the same answer. It's in his book. A police officer came and knocked on the door. Walter passed away in Long Beach, New York, at the age of 90. Okay? So not all documents tell the full story. And again, these are things that I would not have known had I not listened to the survivors. And as Elie Wiesel says, if you listen to a witness, you are a witness. Now, to be sure, there were some fascists who collaborated and willfully. This is not to say that everybody was good, but the statistics are the statistics, and they are the same ones that are at the United States Holocaust Museum in Washington. Next slide, please. I also had a meeting with Pope Francis due to some of the work that I had done, and because people chose not to be indifferent and save someone's life, Pope Francis also met with some of the rescuers. So there are so many other stories to tell. Could you please put back up the slide of the rabbi so we have that on the screen while I answer questions? And again, we must remember that this is the framework if it was all wrong, but these are moments of light. It's the history of that time. Police officers may have warned you. You have 5 people who helped, the average person, police officer, the local clergy, many who got fake documents for people. Walter Wolfe had fake documents provided by priests and nuns. Ursula was dressed as a nun, hidden in a convent. You had officials in a concentration camp who helped, okay, and the officials in town hall that provided some of the fake documents. So without any of those 5, nobody could have survived. Some people had all 5 elements. So there you go. It's an unbelievable story. I was shocked to learn this. And as my friend Ellen said, when we were having dinner one night, she was in New York shortly after I found this picture, and we were having dinner in New York City. And what cuisine would a nice Italian girl and a nice Jewish girl have in New York when we could go to restaurants in New York? Of course, it was Chinese. And Ellen and her husband were looking at this, and they said, you must do something with this. And Ellen said, we always knew you were an honorary Jew. You're the only one who could understand Campania and being Jewish on planet Earth. Doesn't mean I'm a scholar in this. It doesn't mean I'm the only person who could understand Italy. But Campania, in Ellen's words, I sort of would understand that. It has been an honor to be with you all tonight, and I'm looking forward to answering the questions.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I got to take your rabbi picture down just so that you and I can have a little bit of a chat now. Incredible. The messages are coming in. If you have any questions, we ask you please type them into the chat, and we'll do our best to get to as many as possible in the short amount of time we have. Thank you so much for being here. The first question that we got was actually from Ed, and Ed would like to know, what is the situation now with the Vatican Archives from that era? Are all the records and documents now accessible to scholars?
The Vatican Archives were opened in the beginning of March. I think the exact date was March 3rd. And then with COVID, everything shut down. The Vatican Archives are open. And I have seen many of those documents. There are thousands of pages of documents, of which I have seen some, and I even have some this evening. Next slide. Next question.
It's okay, we got through the slides. First of all, one common question quickly, we'll get to it because I'm about to bring up the book, is people are asking, where can they get your book?
You can get the book. It's a real book. It's by an imprint of HarperCollins. And they took a chance on me. Again, I never thought I would write a book. So it's an imprint of HarperCollins. You can get it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble.
There's your answer.
And also some local, obviously local independent shops.
There you go. So speaking of the book, for those who have seen the book or the flyer for this event tonight, there's a picture of a cyclist. And throughout your whole speech, we didn't really touch on the cyclist. Can you maybe explain who he was, his whole role in all of this?
Okay, so I'm on this very unexpected journey. I see a picture of a rabbi. Again, you have to remember, I was 10 to 18, and I was an Italian farm girl in these summer months, okay? I can pluck a chicken and, can the tomatoes. Little did I know that there was this little sleepy village had this hidden story of Jews. Starts me on this unexpected journey many years later. I wind up writing a book. I met some wonderful people who backed the documentary, and Isabella Rossellini's the narrator. So Joseph Perella, Ken Langone, Maria Bartiromo, Mario Gabelli, Rocco Camiso, etc. So many wonderful people backed the documentary. And the documentary is inspired by the book, but because it came about a few years later, some of the people in the book are in the documentary, but some no longer could travel, or unfortunately were no longer here. And by the way, it's very hard for me to watch the documentary and those pieces, because I've spent so much time with those people that most of them are not here any longer, and like seeing grandparents, parents. So having said that, we make the documentary, and there's so many more stories that keep coming out, and I find out about the story of Gino Bartoli, who was a cyclist, and he was based in Florence. I lived in Florence for 6 years as an adult, and I lived 1 block from the synagogue and did not know this story at all, even living in Florence. Go figure, okay? Having said that, Gino Bartoli was a cyclist who won the Tour de France in 1938 and 10 years later in 1948. Pretty amazing, right? So he still trained in all those years during the war. But Gino Bartoli was a good man. And in the documentary, it shows a family, Giorgio Goldenberg and his family, that were saved by Gino Bartoli. But Gino Bartoli helped save many others because of those fake documents that were gotten by many priests and nuns. But the documents needed to be transported. Now, Gino Bartoli was able to put the fake documents, roll them up and put them in his bicycle tubes and ride around with them and be able to bring them to places like from Florence to Perugia, which is a nice long bicycle ride away. For most of us, we'd never make it, but he's a Tour de France cyclist, okay? And as his son said, well, of course he had permission to train and go around the mountains because he was Gino Bartoli, as many other cyclists did. Obviously, he couldn't train in his backyard going round and round. See? Italians have a way of going around things like this. So that's how Gino Bartoli becomes a thread in the documentary, but he's not in my book. Okay, I hope that answered the question.
Definitely answers that question. Our next question comes from, I'm not sure if it's pronounced Oliver or Olivier, but they would like to know, which part of Italy was more secure for the Jewish people? Was the northern part of Italy more secure? Was the southern part? Was there no safe zone?
You have a very interesting question and a very good question. This is the story of Italy. Most of Italy was fine in terms of being secure until 1943. And when I say fine, these are not my words, they're the words of the survivors. Okay, they knew what was going on in other parts of Europe. So while they were in places in Italy, there were people who were being deported to Auschwitz, okay? So you've got to, again, take that framework of the time. So Italian Jews were allowed to live in their own home. One of the people in the documentary and my book said, my father was a lawyer, okay? My dad was a lawyer, and he couldn't officially practice law, but he did the unofficial thing. He looked at everything, filled out the papers, and his associate, his friend, stamped the documents. So we made a little less money, but it went along. No, Jewish children could not go to public school, but the Jews organized schools. So all throughout the boot, Milan, Florence, Rome, Naples, Calabria, the Italian Jews lived in their own homes until 1943. The foreign Jews were placed in concentration camps or in internamento libero, free internment, which meant they were allowed to live amongst Italians in remote villages where the Italian government paid for the apartment, gave them the same rations as the Italians, and they lived amongst the people. So until 1943, their lives were not at risk. All bets are off after September 8th, 1943. And as the Americans liberated Italy, they liberated from Sicily through the boot, through Naples, and they get stuck for many, many months in Monte Cassino, which is between Naples and Rome. Once they pass Monte Cassino and get to Rome, and it's as the Americans and the Allies liberate. So it's over time that it takes. So you were always better in the South. And then as in 1943, that area was free and liberated. And in the North, you were at more risk. There's also San Saba, which is a concentration camp in northern Italy that became run by the Germans with some fascists after September 1943. And that was an awful place. I hope that answered the question. Also, anybody who has questions, you may write to me and I will answer them. My email is really easy and you can put it up later, but it's Elizabeth.Bettina@gmail.com. And annoy me until I answer you back. I promise I will. Sometimes I miss one or two every so often, okay? But I will answer them. Next question.
I can promise from firsthand experience, she eventually does answer all of her emails, and we will most definitely put that up towards the end. We spoke a lot about your time growing up in Italy and different places you visited in Italy. Have you ever visited Israel? And if so, have you ever been to Yad Vashem?
No, I have not been to Israel, and that is just hasn't happened. I was supposed to happen a few times, but life intervenes, and I could not get away from the States for a long enough time. While I was writing the book and making the documentary, I was supposed to go at one point, but it didn't happen. But I did go to Auschwitz for the 70th commemoration of the liberation 5 years ago with 300 survivors. And to me, that was so important to go to Auschwitz with the people who survived. It was January 27th, 5 years ago, 2 feet of snow, freezing. I had every piece of clothing on that you could possibly imagine. You could have dropped me out of the Empire State Building and I would have bounced and not broken anything. I don't know how these people survived the horrors of Auschwitz, let alone in striped pajamas with no warmth, with the horrors that were there. It was a privilege to be there with the survivors. And one gentleman, Roman Kent, and you should all look up Roman Kent. He was one of the keynotes, and he spoke for about 14 minutes. And in the last 2 minutes, he talks about if he had the ability to have an 11th commandment given by the powers above, added to the 10 we sort of all know, it would be thou shalt not be a bystander. And I think that sort of sums up what I felt about what I learned. And I sign all my books, if you're not indifferent, things can be different. And you don't have to stand in front of a Nazi tank. You can just give someone up your seat on a bus or the subway, or hold a door open for someone, or help them with a package, or help them out if they're having a tough day. There's a lot of ways you can make just a little difference. So Roman Kent was amazing. And being in Auschwitz that day, And when the survivors of Auschwitz saw some of the pictures in my book, they couldn't believe it. And they were like children in school, beyond them, seeing a wedding beyond them.
When all this is done and we're allowed to travel, maybe I could speak to Judy and Galit about getting you on the next JNF mission to Israel. Give you the real VIP tour and show you the land. We're coming towards that point of the night, so we're going to have two quick questions. Somebody by the name of iPhone would like to know, the concentration camps that you mentioned in Italy, were they, who directed them? Were they the German Nazis? Were they Italians? He did not quite understand that part.
Hi, iPhone. They were directed by the Italians. They were fascist carrying, card carrying people, but they interpreted the rules they wanted to. People who were in Feramonti, children went for ice cream with the comandante into town. And as Edith Burns said, I can't believe these children went for ice cream. My little sisters went to an oven. Those are Edith's words. They were not death camps. They were not work camps. It's obvious from their clothing, the way you see them. There's also footage that the Imperial Museum in England has of people leaving Feramonti, and people look healthy as compared to what you saw when people left Auschwitz or Dachau. My book begins with a liberator of Dachau, and he says these people in these pictures look like people in Franklin, Tennessee. They don't look like the people I liberated from Dachau. Next question.
Our iPhone question actually came from Bettina Cohen-Sutton, so not just iPhone. Our last question before we wrap things up comes from Dan, and Dan would like to know, we talk about all of this in the past, there's still anti-Semitism today, and Dan would like to know, what are your thoughts on the current state of the rising anti-Semitism in Europe and in North America?
That is, I think, horrific. I am so fortunate that my best friends, people who've known me since elementary school, are all Jewish. I can't imagine why there's anti-Semitism, so it's very hard for me to understand that. As Judy mentioned earlier, I was invited to speak around the world, and one of the schools invited me to speak was in Rome, Duquesne University, which is based in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh. Think about Pittsburgh. I landed in Rome to speak about this subject and about the Be the Difference program on the day that the synagogue was shot up in Pittsburgh. That to me was so horrifying, I can't even begin to tell you. So I believe that if this story was important years ago when I first stumbled upon it, and through the years of lecturing, it's very important to listen to those who lived through the history, lived through the worst time of anti-Semitism, at least that I'm aware of, and say, but people chose to make a difference. That's why you have Yad Vashem honoring many people from all over Europe, okay? Even Poles, even Germans. As Walter Wolfe said, who was German, he said, there were some good Germans in a bad situation, okay? So I believe that if everybody looks at people, love thy neighbor as thyself, treat them as human beings, as the survivor said, we'll live in a better world. You know, and everybody has to listen to Roman Kent and not be a bystander. If you're a bystander, you let things slide, that's wrong. You had asked a question earlier about the Vatican Archives. And I just want you, if you could put up those 3 slides.
Yeah, let's pull them out.
Okay, so people can see that there are many records, and this is just an example of that.
Here we go.
These are from the Vatican. These are from the Secretary of State's office. They're to the Archbishop of Campania, Paladucci, and there's money being sent, 5,000 lira from the Vatican, and it's signed by Giovanni Montini. Montini is in the Secretary of State's office. Montini is also mentioned in the documentary, not in my book, okay? Montini becomes Pope Paul VI. Now, this is only one document. They also instrumental in helping the Kleinman family be reunited. So this is one of thousands of documents, okay? So you see the stamp, the date, and the signature. That just gives people an example. There's tons of these. So, you know, most people never get to see Vatican documents. I figured I've got one, you might as well see it. They are open to the public once we get out of this COVID situation. Are there any more questions that you need?
No, I think, you know, we're actually at that point of the night. Before we get to our closing remarks from our president, Karen Aflalo, Elizabeth, it's been a pleasure. It's been an honor having you here with us tonight. Karen's going to say more on that note. But I want to thank everybody else for joining us here tonight. We apologize for the little bit of technical difficulties, but, you know, this is Zoom and it's the world we live in. If you enjoyed what you saw tonight, and we hope you did, join us next Wednesday. JNF Canada is going to present their IQ Trivia Night Home Edition Round 2. All you have to do is click on a link that will be sent to you in just a moment. Register. It's a minimum $18 donation. All money goes towards charity. Wednesday night, we're giving away Amazon gift cards. We're giving away tablets. We're giving away prizes all throughout the night, even if you didn't win. So JNF Canada's IQ Trivia Night next Wednesday, August 26th, 8 p.m. You're playing from home. All you need is a laptop, a phone, an iPad. Join us. We hope to see you all there. Register, and if you have any issues with registration, you can reply to the email that sent you the reminders from your registration, phil.frey@jnf.ca.
I want to thank you all for participating this evening. Thank you, everyone, especially Judy. And the last thing I want to say is please remember not to forget. Remember not to forget.
So true.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we say goodbye, I'd like to pass the room over to Karen Aflalo, the president of JNF Montreal. Karen.
Thank you, Phil. So as the president of JNF Montreal, I have the honor of speaking at so many wonderful events in support of our mission to build Israel. But tonight, I am reminded that as we look towards our future and endeavor to create a better world, we must always remember our past and where we came from. I want to thank you, Elizabeth, Bettina, for teaching us about such an important yet forgotten aspect of both our communities' shared history, and for also pointing out that humanity has the opportunity to choose right over wrong and good over evil. Lastly, I would like to thank all the dignitaries who supported the event and took the time to join us, our amazing group of Italian-Canadian partner organizations, and the volunteers and professionals at JNF Montreal, especially our dedicated board member and chair of outreach, Judy Fish, who has been working at putting together tonight's event behind the scenes for almost 2 years. Thank you so much, Judy. I hope everyone had a lovely evening, and good night.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Judy.
If you check your chat box right now, I have just sent out Elizabeth's email. If you have any questions, please feel free to get in touch with her. You've also received another message with a link, linktr.ee/JNF Canada. We hope to see you all again next week at Trivia Night. Thank you for being here tonight. It's been a pleasure. It's been an honor. Elizabeth, we're going to hold you to come to Israel with us.
Yes.
I'll be there.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody.
Stay safe.